It's 3 p.m. in the UK, 10 a.m. on the East Coast, wherever you're joining us from, though. A warm welcome to the first edition of Leaders Live.
I'm James Emmett, that's David Cushnan, and we are live across the internet right now from our all-new Leaders broadcast studio. Just a little touch of paint needed still. Right here in SW London.
We are going to be here every single month with Leaders Live, impactful, topical conversation on all the big issues challenging you, the global sports industry.
We're live on Twitter and on your social platform of choice, LinkedIn, and you can get in touch with your thoughts, questions, comments. @LeadersBiz is the Twitter handle, and I think you can probably do it underneath the video on LinkedIn. You can catch up whenever you want on demand.
Excellent. Today, it's a disrupted and challenged sponsorship market, but one where opportunity awaits the bold and the creative. So what do we and you need to know about sponsorship in 2021?
Where do we start, David? New models of sponsorship, new approaches to activation, new entrants on the scene. We'll be joined by one such shortly in the form of Robert Bridge, Chief Customer Officer at Cinch, the online car firm that's currently spending in style on sponsorship.
And later we'll get a perspective from the rights holding side of the market with former RFU Chief Commercial Officer and World Surf League CEO Sophie Goldschmidt joining us live.
But first, before all of that,
Oh, yeah.
David, a little segment, a bit of topical chit-chat from us.
Okie doke.
And it's going to be a quick-fire segment. We're hoping this is going to catch on across the series of Leaders' Lives to come. We're calling this one Q&A and A and Q. And David, you've got the first Q.
Indeed, I have. This Q&A and A and Q is about audio and the buzz around Clubhouse. Now, you invited me to join this a few weeks ago, but what is so good about it?
Yeah, so this is about Clubhouse. It's the social app for pop-up audio conversations, discussions, arguments often. What's so good about it? I don't know, I'm afraid, David. Personally, I don't have the answer yet. People are calling it the future of conferencing, but I'm not so sure about that. Perhaps unsurprising that I'm not so sure about that. But certainly the momentum around its user acquisition strategy has been quite impressive. But as for the product itself, I'm not yet sure. What about you?
Yeah, I found it a little bit hard to navigate. I've popped into a couple of rooms to listen in, but only really for 2 or 3 minutes at a time. Really interested, though, to see how the creator and monetization tools take effect and get rolled out. That's going to be important. It's also important to remember that Clubhouse, very much one of many platforms that are moving into the audio space, and they're riding the audio wave. But James, where do you think it fits into what I see in the script you have described as the wider audio soundscape in sport?
Yeah, no, I went with audio picture to begin with, but then I realised that we were sort of blurring the senses there, and I like to be tight with language. Well, the audio soundscape, David, where do they fit? I would say at the very side of the audio landscape at the moment, making quite a lot of noise. What's that over there on the side of the audio soundscape? It's the noise I'm hearing from Clubhouse. The drum beat right in the middle, though, that's podcasts. And particularly Spotify, central to that at the moment, and plenty of sports rights holders as well, working out where they can play in podcasts at the moment. Is that another sound I can hear in the soundscape? Yeah, that's voice, with Amazon et al. Leading the way there. Last word on Clubhouse, David, in the Q&A and A and Q section. Will we all be on it this time next year?
It's a maybe edging towards a no comment from me, I think. Very interested to see what competitors do. Established platforms like Twitter moving into the audio space themselves with a product called Spaces. And I think, as we mentioned, those use cases of monetization are going to be absolutely critical in determining whether it's a lasting success or not. But it's certainly very interesting.
It's certainly very interesting. And when we rehearsed, you said the jury's still out.
Yes.
And I said the jury's definitely not out about next week. So shall we stick with that link?
Yeah, let's do that. And I'll tell you what, James, something I'm absolutely certain about is Leaders Week Direct Abu Dhabi, which is happening next week. It's Tuesday and Wednesday, the 16th and 17th of March. It's going to be a lot of fun. We've got a range of top speaker guests. We've got an online library that we're currently stacking full of really superb one-to-one conversations, panels, presentations. There's going to be a lot to look at and enjoy. Tuesday and Wednesday next week. Who are you looking forward to hearing from?
Well, I have bookmarked 3 particular sessions that I am raring to go with. Everton Chief Executive Denise Barrett-Baxendale is speaking. I'm looking forward to hearing about the new stadium from her. The NBA's head of Next Gen Telecast, Sarah Zuckert, also speaking. I'm looking forward to hearing from her. And the president of 49ers Enterprises, Parag Marathi, always a fascinating speaker.
Also, we'll be hearing from Aston Martin F1 Managing Director Jeff Slack, John Abamonde, the CEO of BSE Global, the parent company of the Brooklyn Nets and the Barclays Centre, of course, and Manoj Badali, the co-owner of the Rajasthan Royals. Conversation that I recorded just a couple of days ago. Really fascinating look at the future of global cricket.
Shall I tell you what else is going to be high up on the agenda?
What is it, James?
Sponsorship.
Okay.
And we're going to have a number of big brands, both regional in the Middle East, but also global. And I hope that that leads us on nicely to the main topic of today's Leaders Live show and the big question that we are asking today, which is...
Why are online car dealerships the only brands investing in sponsorship?
Short answer, David, they're not.
No, they're absolutely not. It's a provocative question designed to discuss.
To discuss?
Yeah.
Yeah, to discuss, yeah. To provoke discussion?
To provoke discussion.
Yeah, sure. It certainly seems like their online car selling websites are dominating sports sponsorship at the moment. Only today, Kazoo signed yet another sports sponsorship deal with the EFL. Cinch, who we're going to hear from later, going at almost exactly the same rate. Yeah,
absolutely. New players emerging, of course, in this online world as various sectors go through their own disruption as well. Online delivery services being a case in point, whether that's Deliveroo, Takeaway.com, DoorDash over in the US, Uber Eats. And it's a new wave of players in the market at a time when some of the more established traditional sectors and players are maybe reining back a bit.
Yeah, indeed. And certainly over here in the UK, the challenging atmosphere is only set to get more challenging with the spectre of new regulations on gambling sponsorship looking more and more likely to come to pass. And that'll be certainly a recent traditional reservoir of revenue drying up for sports organisations across the UK.
Indeed. Another consideration is certainly marketing departments within big brands. And through a lot of our conversations with you, the sports industry, we know that a lot of those departments are being either slimmed down or maybe even closed down entirely. Huge amount of turnover in that particular sector of the market.
Yeah, it's been a challenging time, verging on a crisis for sports marketing. But out of crisis, so the cliche goes, comes opportunity. And it's a cliche for a reason. And as some established sponsor brands pull back, other disruptors are emerging and are using sports sponsorship as the vehicle to spread their message. Very good.
Yeah.
And build their business.
Doesn't write itself, this. One such disruptor is Cinch, an online used car service for finding and buying second-hand cars. Its goal, very much to offer a faff-free online car service. And in the UK, it's been pretty hard to ignore over the past 6 months or so as it's embarked on a pretty substantial marketing push.
Yeah, 3 big ones. In December, it signed a deal to become the new title sponsor of the annual pre-Wimbledon Queen's Club tennis tournament here in London. Then, less than a month later, it agreed a deal to become the sleeve sponsor of Tottenham Hotspur's men's and women's teams. And just last month, it was announced as England cricket's latest principal partner.
And let's hear a lot more about all of that now, because we're delighted to have with us on the line Cinch's Chief Customer Officer, Robert Bridge, who's going to help us paint a picture of what's going on. And Robert, let's put that question to you first of all. Very good to see you. What is going on with these online car firms investing so substantially in sponsorship?
Yeah, thanks for having me. Good to be here. Well, I guess there's it's the reflection of the big consumer shift that's happening that you sort of touched on. People are prepared to buy pretty much anything and everything now online, and COVID's been a catalyst for that. And the change in the car world has been substantial, and it's not just been in our world, in the used car world, but also some brands have come out and talked about how they're using online as their primary selling mechanism in the new car world. So huge change going on and reflecting the consumer shift that we're seeing everywhere.
Robert, we just ran through 3 of the big deals that you signed in the last 3 months. I guess you've got a lot of sponsorship proposals on your plate at the moment. What are you looking for in a sponsorship proposal? What makes a proposal stand out for you and for Cinch?
Yeah, we're a brand that appeals to every single driving license holder pretty much. So from 18 to or 17 to 70, I guess. So reach is really important. We're looking also for brands that generate significant awareness. And that's, I guess, more traditional, the traditional approach for looking at sponsorships and leveraging the trust that comes with being affiliated with well-known sports franchises and teams and organizations. The areas that we're looking at in addition to that are ones that have genuinely strong content creation teams and also ethoses and approaches. We see that sort of middle funnel earned media engagement side really important. How can we co-create? How can we work together on that sort of opportunity? And then very importantly, the data side. So how can we know that we're talking to the right people? How can we measure? How can we demonstrate that there's the value driving through the funnel through into the conversion side as well? So registration for us is really important, and then so CRM and the databases that the rights holders have is important.
Let's dig a bit more into that, Robert. Appreciate it's early days for a lot of these partnerships. Some of them haven't really kicked off yet. But what are you looking to learn about your customers specifically through these kind of partnerships? And the key question, once you have that information, of course, is how are you going to translate that data into actionable insights, decisions within Cinch? Yeah,
the measuring trust is one thing that we're discussing, and the trust in the Cinch brand that comes from the affiliation with those partnerships. And by the way, I shouldn't forget that we've also got a major deal with the Northampton Saints, who are doing reasonably well at the moment on the rugby side. So can't leave them out. But trust. Measuring trust and as a metric is one that we're looking at. We're looking at trying to understanding brand awareness, and the increase of that driven by the partnerships is something that we're looking at. We're also looking at consideration to purchase and how those metrics change over time. As you say, it's early days for us, but certainly those are KPIs that we're looking at. And then in that sort of middle funnel area, looking at how we can measure social engagement and ultimately driving into traffic and registrations. Registrations are something that we can understand. We can look at that, and then we can tie that then back to when somebody converts and see, okay, were these people that were engaged with our activations or indeed engaged with either cricket or Spurs or at Queens or Saints. So we're trying to look at those sort of 4 key KPIs across the funnel and measure that in each case. It's not yet an exact science, and it's early days for us, but that's certainly what we're trying to do. And then there are some intangibles as well that we'll look at and take a little bit longer to measure over time, as people know, econometrics and that sort of stuff often takes 18 months or so to really play through. So that's why longer term relationships, I think, are important in this as well.
Robert, you've obviously got competitors who are also investing heavily in sports sponsorship. Yeah, in sports sponsorship at the moment. We mentioned Kazoo, obviously, only today just signed yet another deal. To what extent are you looking at what they're getting up to and how they're doing it? And are we going to see a sort of another Nike versus Adidas battle royale brewing in the sports sponsorship sector?
I mean, it's definitely a competitive place, as you say. I wouldn't be doing my job if I wasn't keeping an eye on what they're up to. It's not driving my strategy, however, and having differentiating our brands is an important part of my job. And so therefore the strategies and tactics that we put in place are very important. I think what it shows is that it's a really hot area. It really shows that it's an industry that there is great potential in, and having a strong competitor in a marketplace is in some ways validation of the opportunity. So quite like, as a sportsman, a poor sportsman myself, a bit of competition is healthy, I think.
Good stuff. Stay there, Robert. We're going to chat to you some more in a moment. We're also going to bring in Sophie Goldschmidt for another perspective. You are watching Leaders Live.
Are leaders born or made?
I think it's a bit of both. Combination.
It's a difficult question, but I would say a combination of both.
Developed.
I have to say I think they're made.
To do it properly, you need to have had the scar tissue and the experiences along the way to make you, in my view, as good a leader as you should be.
Both.
A leader is born.
I would have to say both.
Leaders are truly made through the experience of leading.
Some leaders are born and some leaders are made.
Mostly made, I think.
Absolutely, for me, they're made.
I'm afraid they are born, but that's very pessimistic. I think they are born.
I mean, you need to have some leadership skills, which, from my experience, are almost there from a very early stage.
But I do think it exists within people.
You can teach leadership.
To be a good leader, you've got to be able to have the right people around you. Find good people.
I think leaders can be made.
Leaders are born, then made.
But it's possible to have it in you and not develop it.
The idea that leaders are born is a very dangerous one.
You are born to be a leader, but you might be born halfway through your life to be that leader.
You can become a leader at any time.
Welcome back to Leaders Live. Good to have you with us. We're back with Robert Bridge, Chief Customer Officer at Cinch, and we're going to bring in Sophie Goldschmidt, who can provide a view from a rights holder on the state of the sponsorship marketplace.
Yes, indeed. Sophie is currently an advisory board member at the World Surf League and a former CEO there, of course. She ran commercial and marketing for the RFU for many years over here in the UK before that. Sophie, thank you very much for being with us, for joining us over in the West Coast of the US. Thanks for getting up early, Sophie. It's not just the World Surf League that you're advising. You've got a fair few rights holders on your plate now. Who are you working with? And as an extension of that, what are you seeing about the health of the current global sponsorship market?
Thank you. Yeah, and good morning, good afternoon, evening, depending where you are. Yeah, I'm currently advising and on the board of several different organisations, both within sport, also in the technology and fitness sector, which is giving me a really interesting perspective, sort of broadening my horizons. And yeah, seeing a lot of challenges out there, but I think positively there is light at the end of the tunnel. I think we are going to be bouncing back. But I think, look, clearly there was a big gap in live sport in most markets. fans are still not able to come back at all or near full capacity in most instances. So look, it's definitely challenging times, but I think it's been fascinating to see how people are learning, evolving, and sort of preparing to recover and come back, or already have in many instances. So I think a lot of learnings already, and I think, look, the future looks a lot brighter after an incredibly challenging sort of 12 to 18 months.
What's making you, Sophie, optimistic about the sponsorship market, and what are you going to be looking for as the market looks to recover?
Yeah, I think, look, momentum's building on various fronts. I think the acceleration of what it means to be purpose-led for an organisation and an athlete has gone to a whole new level, and I think that's very positive for sport and just society overall. I think people may now look at sport in a different way as far as how it can help them communicate their message and reach different audiences. I mean, the impact around Black Lives Matter, sort of the momentum building again around women's sports. And I think this time they're here to stay in a bigger way. We've obviously had moments in the past, but I don't think they've necessarily lasted like we would have wanted. I'm optimistic just by the overall disruption. I think there's several organisations that were doing very well, but sort of despite this weren't really very open-minded to change. I think now everyone's sort of to a certain extent had their business sort of turned on its, and I think that disruption is leading to creativity, new type of partnership opportunities that we haven't seen before. And I think it's also a great opportunity for some emerging properties. Everyone's sort of almost been sort of put back at the start line again. And some of those gaps that certain properties had maybe aren't there anymore. So I think it's been really exciting to see some of the new properties and the technology that goes along with that. In fact, one of the companies I'm advising, a goalie, just came out with a very exciting announcement today, working with the International Paralympic Committee. And the type of content management and fan engagement, and hence new sort of incremental revenue opportunities that some of these technology platforms such as a goalie are able to provide, I think are incredibly exciting and can really sort of turbocharge the whole ecosystem. But, you know, esports we've obviously been talking about for a while, but they did particularly well despite sort of the COVID pandemic. I think the Drone Racing League would be another one I would call out, making some great strides led by their sort of new leader, Rachel Jacobson. Women's soccer over in the US, some interesting things happening with volleyball, another sport that now I'm working quite closely with. So look, I think there's a lot to be optimistic about.
Sophie, you've got leadership experience with some big, beefy rights holder organisations, the RFU and the NBA. More recently, with probably, I think it's fair to describe them as an emerging rights holder, emerging sport in the World Surf League. Taking that kind of emerging, I mean, I think challenging times are more challenging for the smaller players or the challengers. How is a challenger rights holder like World Surf League approaching sponsorship sales just now?
I think in a very sort of creative way. I think often the sort of the upside of being with more of a challenger brand is that you can be more nimble, you can pivot and evolve more quickly. Change just can be more rapid overall. I think also your fans often have a different relationship with you. I think there can be more engagement. I mean, the World League, we had incredible engagement. We were one of the top 3 sports leagues properties in the world. And we were able just to communicate with them in, I think, a much more sort of direct and transparent way, which I think really paid off. So I think there's a few ways that actually being an emerging sort of challenger brand can really help, especially during these times. I think to be agile is kind of the name of the game, and to continue to evolve. You know, it's been said many times, if you're standing still in this day and age, you're going backwards. And I think, you know, never has that been truer than at the moment. So I think that overall sort of creativity and just opportunity to move quicker with new ideas, bringing them to market, testing. I think that's the other thing I would say. With a lot of these bigger brands, maybe that it's more risky for them to try some of these new opportunities, technologies, etc. But often you only learn about what's really going to work by giving it a go. And I think there's probably more leeway and slack with some of these challenger brands to give that sort of opportunity a go, which can hopefully sort of get them further faster. We certainly tried a lot of that at the World Surf League. It didn't all work, but a lot of it did, and got us some really great traction and grew our audience and ultimately our revenue significantly.
Robert, let's bring you back in because I imagine a lot of that is going to chime with you as a challenger brand coming into the sports industry. We've used the word disruption already here, and Cinch is a disruptive brand in its sector. Is that the kind of approach that you're planning to take to your sponsorship and sponsorship activations?
Yeah, as I said, we're definitely looking at taking probably a more digital and content-led approach than perhaps others have in the past. As I talk to the ECB and the LTA, for example, and Spurs especially, actually all of them and the Saints, they've all got already pretty strong approaches on the more modern disruptive channels and have big plans to take them forward. So that was definitely part of the decision-making process, and also, and something that we as a tech-led business found very attractive. You look at the LTA, for example, and they have a significant content team already in place, which for an organisation that's as old as they are, that's great. So I think there's definitely, we're definitely applying that, and we're looking for partners that we can work with that can be, to Sophie's point, agile. My background coming from tech-led businesses, that the whole agility and the test and learn approach and the data flywheels that every West Coast business sort of talks about, we definitely want businesses that understand that, or organizations that understand that and can embrace what we're trying to do in that space, and that they certainly seem to be doing that.
And Sophie, final question, penultimate question to you, and maybe it's sort of smuggling through a little bit of advice for Robert. What do brands, potential sponsors, have to know about the pressures facing rights holders through this disrupted period?
Look, throughout my career, I've been fortunate, I guess, to experience all sorts of different sort of crisis moments. COVID's obviously something very new and has, to a certain extent, taken it to a whole new level. I think it's, when you look at sort of the leadership that I think has really flourished in these times, I think, look, I've mentioned it a lot, agile, but I think that's absolutely key. I think it's being really thoughtful and transparent with your communications, both internally and externally with partners. You can't communicate enough, but I think a really transparent, open type of communication is just being very well received at the moment. And I think partners can hopefully embrace that. And I think that needs to be sort of coordinated. I think, constant creativity and a positive outlook. During these times, there have been a lot of really, really tough moments, and it can wear people down, relationships down. Fans have definitely had frustrations. So I think in a measured way, really keeping that optimism and positivity is absolutely key. And look, I think brands overall, again, we've been taught who knows what's around the corner. And I think having a sort of a confident humility, I think you need confidence in your brand and what you're doing, in your vision. But I think humility is absolutely vital and has been very well received by those that have kind of handled these tricky situations that way. And really digging deep with your partners and being very open and transparent about what you know and what you don't know, and how you can sort of solve things together. Certainly, when I've sort of been on both sides of the fence, that kind of approach from a brand and a leadership team has always been very well received in my experience.
Some very resonant lessons on leadership there. And final question to you, Robert, and it's one that we're going to be asking everyone across this series. What have you learnt about leadership over the last 12 months?
Ooh, pretty much everything, I think. It's been incredibly challenging, isn't it, for everyone? For me, always as a leader, I think empathy is super important, and understanding your customers, your teams. If you're not doing that, and and we needed to do that pre-COVID and through the last 12 months for sure. To be a great leader, empathy is really important. But during these times, to put yourself in the shoes of your team when they're at home, they got kids scrawling on the walls while they're trying to do Zoom calls and whatever. Like I think that I learned a lot there, and so yeah, I would say empathy as a leader was pretty important in the last 12 months.
Good stuff. Robert, Sophie, thank you both ever so much for joining us on the first edition of Leaders Live. Really appreciate you being with us.
That's nearly it for the first edition of Leaders Live. If you missed any of the last half hour, you can catch up on demand very shortly. And we're back with another edition at 3 p.m. UK time, 10 a.m. Eastern time, on Wednesday, the 31st of March. And we'll be asking, will we really be asking this, David, whether OnlyFans is the future of sports content?
Yeah, it's another of those provocative questions. Should be a good one. Before then, though, a reminder to register at leadersinsport.com right now to make sure you have booked your virtual place at Leaders Week Direct Abu Dhabi, which is next week, Tuesday and Wednesday, a stacked online library of presentations, case studies and interviews, plus 2 live shows from right here in the studio. Be back here on Tuesday morning, James, UK time at 9 a.m. That's 1 p.m. in Abu Dhabi. We look forward to your company then. But from James and from me and from the rest of the Leaders team, that was Leaders Live. Thanks very much for joining.